Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1071 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Oh my god, I have so many questions after this one. To start at the beginning, we get back to Kuma, who's pushed himself and is going somewhere, and even after reading the chapter, I have no idea what's going on. Someone help me, what is going on? It seems very important. At first I thought Kuma used his paw fruit and just didn't launch high enough and literally ran into the red line. But then I thought about it and I wondered if this wasn't his actual destination, like where he intended on going. And what I mean by this is Revujo, not the little port at the bottom, because at the end, the only thing that we really see him do is look up, so I assume he's about to climb the red line. But for why he would intend on going here is not abundantly clear. Really, the only thing that we have to go on here, I feel like, is the parallel at the beginning of this arc with the robot that Vegapunk is protecting in Egghead. It appeared in Revujo, it wreaked havoc, and then we have Kuma isn't the same kind of robot, but is a robot and seems to be set on going to Revujo, so there could be similarities there. But yeah, at the same time, it's possible that Kuma simply can't push himself across the red line. I don't think that we have an example of this occurring even in the pre-time skip. Everywhere Kuma sent the strats was in Paradise, and he pushed them from Paradise. So it could be that he's climbing the red line just to push himself somewhere in the new world. All I can tell you right now is that I'm excited to see where this goes. It feels climactic, it feels like something cool is about to happen and I'm here for it. But then we pan back to Egghead and it's explained, just like at the end of last chapter, what's going on. CP0 is looking to close off all the exits, but the defense shield around Egghead itself is a problem. Lots of juicy nuggets in all of this. Not least of which is Lucci's reasoning for continuing to try to attack Luffy despite the Navy telling him not to. He says that I refuse to accept Straw Hat Luffy as an emperor. Shout out to my fellow YouTuber Straw Hat Jedi for this one, and you guys should definitely go check out his channel, but he pointed out something to me in a conversation on Twitter. Everybody's used to Luffy being the underdog because Luffy has been the underdog, and that's really what's carried the dynamic of his interactions for hundreds of chapters. But we've had a bit of a dynamic shift recently with the introduction of Gear 5th and now Luffy as an emperor. It's really hard for him to be the underdog again. I think that this may be a reason that some people aren't a huge fan of the current dynamics of the story, as well as some complaints about tension. But what Straw Hat Jedi reminded me of was the beginning of One Piece, man. It's been like 15 years and it's so easy to forget. In the East Blue, Luffy was also stronger than all of his opponents, yet it was still awesome. The reason for this is the dynamic was that we knew that Luffy was strong, but his opponents did not. So what we have now is that even though Luffy is an emperor, like Lucci, you have those which doubt the credibility of the position. It all amounts to about the same, which is that we know something that they don't. It appeals in the same way. But anyway, we come back to the Vegapunks and they're talking about what to do next. Vegapunk states that the intention is for all 7 versions of him to travel with the strats. And I really doubt that this is going to happen. I'm not sure that this is a real argument or if this is one that I've just made up, but it doesn't click for me that we're going to have 7 guests on the ship. It feels like too much. So I think one way or another, we're going to lose some of these Vegapunks, whether they go somewhere else, they're killed, something happens. That's what I think. And you guys know I've said this for several chapters in a row now, that my preference is if there's just one Vegapunk that travels with the strats, my preference is Lilith. But I've yet to really explain why. Let's establish this first. Oda is creating drama regarding the Vegapunks, and I love it. What I mean is that initially the Frontier Dome was active, which protected them, gave them time to sort of figure out what they're going to do, and there's some conversation we'll come back to in a moment. It's working, and then it is not working, and this is a huge mystery. One of the Vegapunks, I think it was Lilith, says to someone inside the control room, we pretty much know that Cypher Pole is not responsible for this. It's obviously not the Struts. I really doubt it's some unnamed character from the background, some sort of worker for Vegapunk. It's most likely one of the Vegapunks which betrayed everyone else. I'm not alone here, right? I feel even more certain that there is some betrayal because Oda has been ham-fisting us reasons to not trust Lilith. He's setting her up as the suspect. At every instance possible, she's like, yes, let's fight them. No, what are we doing? We should fight them. And the other Vegapunks are like, no, our job is to protect the Stella, so this is not necessary. And then suddenly the Frontier Dome disappears. Oh, look, now we just have to fight them. So yeah, some strange mystery. The Frontier Dome from the inside is deactivated. Lilith has every reason in the world to have done this. Therefore, I do not think that it was her. This is kind of my mentality when looking at, for instance, like a murder mystery sort of plots, it's who is the least likely? Who is the author trying the hardest to convince us that they're not the one responsible for the mystery, the murder? That's probably the one who did it. Sorry if I've just ruined every murder mystery movie for you ever. I'm just saying. But let's go through this with some purpose. We know for sure that it wasn't Atlas. I'm pretty sure that it wasn't Pythagoras because we've seen him over the course of the last chapters. He hasn't really gone anywhere. Edison, however, disappeared. Edison is the one that always has ideas, Eureka. I looked relatively quickly. I didn't see him over the last several chapters, so it's possible that he could have done it. But from a personality standpoint, I think that he's too consumed with his thoughts, inventions, and whatever to plot for anything else. It's also possible that it was York, the one that eats a lot. However, I think York is just simply too lazy to do any of this. Lilith is, of course, the most obvious guess. That's why we're not going to choose it. And that leaves you with Shaka. To sort of make up a motivation here, I think that Shaka despises that he is not the main Vegapunk, that Stella is. He wants to become the Stella. I also find him to be very self-righteous because he is the good Vegapunk, and that could lead to him thinking that he is the best version of Vegapunk, even better than the original. I also love the good-evil dynamic between Shaka and Lilith because Lilith acts a lot like pirates do. So Luffy, the one who's here, that is Vegapunk is joining forces with, is the representative of evil, you could say, kind of like the Marines see themselves as justice. If Shaka defines order as being better, then he's not going to like pirates. And in fact, he says something like this in chapter 1065, I know better than to let my guard down with pirates. So basically, I think that Shaka is the trump card that Kizaru alluded to at the end of the last chapter. They already know that Shaka is on their side. Coincidence or not, Shaka is the one who calls Dragon and tells them that his death is imminent, before CP0 even shows up. His death may be perhaps referring to the Stella's death, because he is planning it. You can also speculate a little bit further here, like for instance, Shaka didn't contact Dragon until after it would be impossible for Dragon to show up in time to save Vegapunk. So, contacted too late to save Vegapunk, but contacted just in time to potentially be led into a trap to rescue him. Anyway, I really like this theory for now. We'll see what actually happens. Also like theory of like maybe Shaka and a team up with some of the other Vegapunks, basically to out the Stella. Who knows? Edison could want research funds and could have been bribed, for instance. But I really like Lilith as a traveler with the Strats. She just seems the most pirate-like. She seems like she would get the most out of traveling with the Strats, which is kind of the whole reason anyone ever travels with the Strats. If you have any other ideas though, just drop them in the comment section because you know I'm going to be reading that. But we're actually not done with mysteries. We also have a mysterious faction that Vegapunk can call upon if he needs them. And once they're secured, which happens in the chapter, they feel very good about their chances of survival. So I gave this quite a bit of thought, and my conclusion is that this faction is the Giants of Elbaf. Vegapunk already has established a relationship with the Giants of Elbaf through the events of Ohara and the passing of Ohara in the Scholar's books. It is also very likely that Elbaf is adjacent to Egghead, as in it's a nearby island. Also, after it's confirmed that their allies will be coming, the Vegapunk's plan is essentially to buy time. Makes sense that they're not here, they're on a nearby island. When you look at the Dendemushi, it's possible that it has burns on it, so it could be Jaguar D. Saul. And the response that he gives to Vegapunk's request fits with how I see Saul and the Giants as characters. And he states in some chapter recently that Saul is in hiding, but seems to imply that he knows where he is. It's also a perfect segue for Elbaf being the next arc. So pretty much in every way, this theory checks boxes for me, and I feel pretty good about it. But anyway, the Frontier Dome goes down, and CP0 realizes this. They then head up to evaluate the main laboratory, and they encounter the Strat ship. Zoro waking up was an incredibly awesome moment. I absolutely fanboyed, unapologetically. Kind of reminded me of Whitebeard, if we're honest. You know, every time that they tried to assassinate him on the ship, or Ace did, and then he would just wake up from dead-ass asleep, yeah. The look on Kaku's face when he sees Zoro, priceless. Meanwhile, Vegapunk's off doing something, and Bonnie is chasing him. She's like, repeating the same thing that she said in many chapters prior. What happened to my dad? Can you fix him? Fix him. And Vegapunk, in short, says no. But that there is a good reason. So overall, I don't feel like we actually learned anything. But I'm starting to get a feeling, and you guys let me know what you think, because this is debatable. But I feel like Oda's digging in so much on this Bonnie and Kuma thing when the answer is obvious, right? That Vegapunk can return Kuma's recollections, his memory, who he is. And there's something between Vegapunk and the Revolutionary Army. That's like the obvious answer. So the longer this drags out, it makes me wonder if it's more complicated or different than this. But then we turn the page and suddenly Kid is there, and he has arrived to Elbaf, which this tells us is that, particularly if this theory that the giants are going to help out Vegapunk and this leads directly into Elbaf, we're going to get more Luffy and Kid soon. Which I really like. I like the idea of it. I mean, for a while we've just expected more between Kid and Luffy. I don't know exactly what that is, but they have to be in the story together at the same time for anything to happen, so it appears like that will. The other thing that I want to draw your attention to is the plot thread for Kid and Killer, as they're looking for the burned man, right? And so that was the last thing that they sort of said, and it just works out in stories that their path will lead them to him. We now know that they're going to Elbaf. I think that the man marked by flames is Jaguar D Sol. He's a giant. He's going to show up with Vegapunk. It's going to lead to Elbaf. All of this is interrelated, which really works for me. But actually, let's stay here a moment longer. There's also an interesting character building line for Kid, where he says, "When have I ever shirked adventuring on an island?" Or exploring is what he says. Which, you know, it makes you appreciate Kid in kind of a different way. It's easy to think of him as maybe like the antithesis of Luffy from the Supernova. But no, Kid is a dreamer. I actually think that in terms of how Oda originally classified pirates, he's a peace main. This sort of reiterates his whole journey for the One Piece. I think Kid is, under the surface, he's very likable. And then we finish the chapter cutting yet again, this time to Garp. He's gonna try to rescue Kobe, which means our boy is attempting to solo Blackbeard. Good lord. I cannot express to you how anxious this makes me, because I see no way that this goes well for him. You kind of wonder whether or not this is a suicide mission. Garp is no fool, and yes, I know that he had his prime, and in his prime he might have done things like this and been successful, but do I really believe that Garp believes that he is going to kill Blackbeard? Meanwhile, all of his fodder Marines are going to take on the Titanic captains. Do I believe that? No. It feels a lot like Whitebeard in Marineford going to rescue Ace, doesn't it? Paralleled and twisted beautifully, like we always discuss on the channel. It also has me wondering about how Marineford affected Garp personally. I mean, you know, regardless of what he actually did during Marineford, that tore him up, and it was obvious in every panel that he was in with Ace. I kind of think that that was Garp's breaking point. From this point forward, if a situation like it arose again, he will do what it is that he actually wants to do. Orders be damned. In this case, you could say, call it something like protecting his sons. But anyway, it's the Marine representative of the Old Guard going to rescue one of his direct subordinates. He is now calling his allied captains, going to the G14 base. We saw members of this group recently. They looked really hyped. They could be really strong, so he's mounting some kind of force. He's going to go fight one of the supreme powers on the sea. Outlook does not look good. It really does feel as if everything is about to climax and come together. Oda has devoted attention to the vast majority of factions that currently matter in the recent chapters, and it all seems like they're moving to meet together. Regardless of whether it's one Vegapunk or 7, the Strats are going to save the Vegapunks. I think that they're going to go to Elbaf. The Elbaf giants will then side with Luffy. That will be a declaration of war against the world government. World government will then move on Elbaf, then simultaneously, Garp has declared war on an emperor, Blackbeard. I think he's nearby. This also could relate to Elbaf. So the marine force that is coming will have to kill two birds with one stone. Dragon is probably on his way, in part chasing Kuma, in part going to rescue Vegapunk because of the warning that Shaka gave. We also know that the members of the Marines that were highlighted relatively recently are members of SWORD. CP0 is obviously here with Lucci already. Kid has arrived to Elbaf, and oh, by the way, something happened between Blackbeard and Law. I think probably Law lost. Either way, he's in the area. And you guys already know that I want to throw Big Mom into this mix for shits and giggles. Pretty much the only other things that we need is we need a Rouge to fall from the sky and eventually do something. And then we need Emu and the Gorosei to decide to use their weapon again, and or for this idea to come up. Oh yes, and Shanks. I really don't think that any of this is a stretch, but curious as to what you guys think, because it seems pretty quick to jump from a huge battle with Kaido to another huge battle. Maybe there's some lull in between. I'm curious as how it'll work out, but yeah, like I said, feels like what's happening. But anyway, going deeper into this than I probably should, making some big speculations, assuming all of this is true, which is no guarantee that it will, but assuming it's true, I do think that the Marines will end up winning this conflict in some way, because I like the idea that in a Marineford reversal, this time nobody is there to stop Akainu from continuing the war and it just becoming a bloodbath. This also sets the stage for a Blackbeard and Shanks fight, so Shanks doesn't stop it. Meanwhile, I'm really curious about the Strat's health going into a battle, particularly if it's really soon, so we'll see about that. I also really like the idea of the tree that is on Elbaf falling down. But yeah, we're way too far ahead of ourselves. It really did not take very long for Oda to perch me back up on the edge of my seat. Whether the big battle is coming sooner or later, it is coming. Eventually, we know that for sure, and the pieces on the board are moving. So my only advice to you is to buckle up. But yeah, I think I said everything that I wanted to say. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something that I might have missed, something I might have skipped over in discussion, just let me know. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Remember to check out my book, The Booms, Volume 1. Links in the description as well as pinned in the comments, and if you guys get a chance to read it, please leave a review. But yeah, like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, have a wonderful day.